Welcome to How You Pictured It, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs ready to grow their business in a way that feels good. Here you'll find actionable tips and tools to create the business and life you pictured. I'm your host, Kate Hyde with Dear Kate Brand Strategy. Let's get started. I'm joined today by Sabrina Gebhardt. I had the pleasure of meeting Sabrina last year at the Reset Conference and then hearing her speak this year at PhotoNative. And part of what her talk was sparked a little bit of curiosity for me and an idea for this conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about grief and running your business through grief. Sabrina, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to start?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I can't believe that we've only known each other a year. I feel
crazy,
like it's
right?
been longer than that. Yeah, when you said that's when we met, I was like, really? That's when we met? It's only been a year? But yes, so I'm Sabrina Gebhardt. I am a lifestyle, family, and newborn photographer in Fort Worth, Texas. And I've been doing that for over 12 years now. And I'm also a business coach and an educator. I have a mastermind and a membership and all the things. And like Kate said, I love to speak at conferences. I'm one of those weirdos that really enjoys public speaking. Like it's never
good
been,
at it.
Thank you. It's never been hard for me. I really do kind of love being up there. And I also have a podcast as well called Shoot It Straight. So that's me.
That's exciting. So let's just kind of jump into this.
Okay.
At PhotoNative, when you were talking about some big experiences and how they led to changes in your business. Go ahead and tell us what those were, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you the short version of this since, we don't want this to be like a 2-hour podcast. Within 6 months of one another, I lost my grandmother, who was my person. She's my Mimi. She was my soulmate. We traveled together. She raised me for several years. She was my best friend in the whole world. I lost her to cancer, which was at the exact same time and in the exact same place as Hurricane Harvey in Houston. So I lost her the night before the hurricane hit, which means I got stranded in Houston in her home alone for 7 days. And so I was grieving the loss of her. I was also grieving all of my friends and my family. All were still in Houston. So I was grieving all of their losses as well. So it was like an internal grief with external grief on top. Yeah. Again, within 6 months. So those two big things happened. I also had an emergency appendectomy, which emergency was unexpected. Didn't know that I was going to have surgery and then a recovery process. We also sold our home, bought a new home, moved into said home, then moved out of the home to do a renovation. We gutted the thing down to the studs. While we were living in a tiny little Airbnb going through that, I got a call that my mom was unresponsive and had to rush back to Houston. And I actually lost my mom that same day, which was completely unexpected. I knew that Mimi was going to pass because she had cancer and it had been years. My mom was like a fully unexpected, out of nowhere loss. And all of that happened within 6 months. And I have 3 kids and a full-time business and was renovating a house. And like life just kept going. Right. And then all of a sudden, about 6 months later, I woke up one day and realized I'm not okay. And I haven't been okay for a really long time. And that sparked a whole load of changes in my life and in my business.
Yeah. I lost my dad last December. So I guess it's been over a year now, December 2021, unexpectedly. He was diagnosed with cancer, and then the next week he had a heart attack and passed away. So it was really fast and sudden. And he was kind of my person. Like my mom and my brother are besties, and my dad and I were besties kind of. And I mean, I have a really close relationship with my mom too, but losing my dad was shocking. And then that came after, I felt like I was experiencing grief before that, grieving the life I had before the pandemic. So I think it's just interesting to see that there's all different kinds of grief, and how we deal with that and how it affects our business is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I know for me, the grief of the pandemic in my previous life made big changes to my business.
Yeah.
And then, when I lost my dad, I had to make changes too. So let's talk about kind of what some of those changes were that you made with that shift?
Yeah. So for me, a lot of it was realizing that I had built this business that was completely unsustainable. And the crazy thing is that if you would have asked me before any of this happened, I would have been like, no, my business is fantastically sustainable. Like I felt like I was doing everything right. I was charging high prices, and I thought I was in control of my calendar, and I had an assistant, and I was using automations, and I was outsourcing my editing, and I was doing everything right on paper. But a big part of what I realized was not going well was I was actually not allowing any time for myself and to like rejuvenate myself and take care of myself. And my calendar was packed so tight that if anything happened, which in 6 months, a lot of things happened, I had no room to shift and ebb and flow with my clients. And it was just a constant letdown of people, right? Like, I can't serve you now.
Yeah.
I can't do this now. I can't even reschedule you. I just have to cancel you, and it was just that over and over and over again. And so the biggest change for me has been really reevaluating my capacity and how much I can take on, not just client facing work, but also like the podcast and my coaching and different things, and allowing way more of a time buffer for when life does happen.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, I think, so I lost my dad in December, so it was slow season for photography, but like the last thing I talked to my dad about was my podcast. Like I was just starting the podcast, and, I felt, honestly, it was a little bit like guilt that I needed to get it up and published and going. Because that's what I had talked to him about last. And so figuring out how to like do that and still allow for like recovery and adjustment in your, like how you feel, like there's a lot. And I feel like, you're further out than I am from that big event. But it lasts a long time. Grief lasts a long time. And I don't think that we realize that and what that even means, like what does grief mean?
Yeah, it is definitely, it's definitely something that falls into the category of you have no idea what it's like until you're in it, right? It's just like our parents tell us, like, you'll never know how much you love a child until you become a parent. This is the same thing. Like, you can never understand grief until you've been thrown into the fire. And it has been such a learning process for me of allowing myself the grief because it comes in waves. And the first year is very hard and everything is raw, but then it just pops in sometimes. I am 5 years out from this. And just last week, I woke up one morning and I realized that in my dream, I had heard Mimi's voice talking to me, and it it shut me down. I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, she was there. And it just brought it all back, And so it is just this constant cycle. And as business owners, it's hard because we have our kids, we have our family, and then we have this business baby, and we feel like we can't stop, and we don't want to stop because we love it. But recognizing when we have to pull back and allowing ourselves that space is absolutely huge to being able to move forward at all,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I, like you're saying, it does come in waves, and like you could wake up totally fine and everything's going great that day, and then something stupid happens and you like lose it, and you kind of have to stop working for the day sometimes. And that having that buffer space and that white space, as you call it, typically kind of scheduled in so you can allow yourself to adjust and really make those changes is huge.
Yeah. Another thing that has been really valuable to me in this process, and I guess I had done a good job before all of this of really cultivating working with the kinds of clients that like understand, right? I have such an incredible client base. And even now that I'm in coaching and education, like my students and the kind of women that I cultivate into my circle are so understanding. But back when all of this was happening, like I said, I was beyond the point of like, let me reschedule. Your loss was in slow season. Mine was literally through busy season. And so I was I was to the point, and I do not recommend this. This was like an emergency situation, but I was to the point where I was refunding people's money and then emailing them and telling them, I'm sorry, I can't. And which is horrible. But let me just tell you, 100% of the people came back to work with me later. 100% of the people sent their well wishes and checked in, not just via email, but like text messages, and checked in with me months later. And so the relationships I develop in my business, and I still am developing now, are so much more than just client, like a business relationship. Like there's a personal rapport there. And I have always been what I call like an open book. Like I can share my story with the lady at the grocery store and the guy, I'm an open book. And I'm not saying you have to be, but for me, it has served me because in the 5 years since all of this has happened, I have written about it on my blog. I have written about it in newsletters, and I have been very candid about what's happening in my personal life and how I'm handling it. And I have had so many people, unfortunately, over the last 5 years who have been welcomed into quote unquote the grief club and have circled back around with me and have told me, I remember when you wrote about this. I remember when you said this. I remember. And it's like it's serving them now, which is like a horrible thing, but it's also beautiful. And these are relationships I have in my business. We're not even talking about my friends. We're talking about clients, So it's something that you carry with you forever.
Right. Well, and I think that the opportunity for that vulnerability and sharing your experiences is huge, and really does it makes you a person. It makes you have that connection with the people that are in your sphere. And knowing that maybe you could help somebody else when they're going through this is a really amazing thing too. Like to know that you can be like, hey, it did last a lot longer than everyone said it would. It's okay that still I'm 5 years later and I heard her voice in my dream.
I can't tell you how many times, so I'm going to be 43 next month. Okay. So I'm in the years that my friends and I call like cancer, divorce, and parents dying. Like those are the years we're in. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Okay. But I can't tell you how many times I have seen a client share about the loss of a parent on social media, and I immediately DM them, and I'm sending them more than just I'm praying for you, but it's like a heartfelt, I know what this feels like. If I can help you in any way, I've gone on this path ahead of you. How can I help you through this? And it's, again, it just goes so far beyond me taking their photos and them paying me. It's like now relating to them truly from human to human, and like that deep relationship, even if they don't ever hire me again for photos, it's like not that, right? It's so much farther than just business, and it's allowing those relationships to carry you forward, I guess.
Well, and I think as photographers too, it gives us such a different perspective. Like I've always known photos are important, but then when all you have left is a photo, and they say that, but you don't realize it until it's there, and you're like, well, shit, I wish I had a video, or I wish I had a voicemail too, or, the last family pictures we had taken were in 18 maybe, which that's pretty good. I feel like for an extended family session. But especially through a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But, those things are way more important than I ever realized. And I always have been like, extended family sessions. But now I'm like, no, I'll take your extended family photos. Bring your parents. Let's go. Let's get the photos of grandpa.
Yeah. I've always hated the extended family sessions, but now the same thing. I'm like, grandparents, yes, let's do it. It's made me have this total new appreciation for all of the relationships that matter within a family. And it's not something that I necessarily advertise, but for my existing clients, when they ask, it is an easy yes for me, because now I can serve them in that way because I know how valuable it is.
I also realized that, so one thing that I noticed, this sucks, but I noticed that all of the photos that I have taken have always just been of the kids, when we're together, it's photos of the kids doing whatever, not my parents with the kids or, just my parents and I, or those kinds of things. None of us are very good about turning the camera on the adults in the room. And like, I realized how important that is too, like how unseen we are sometimes by each other, and how undocumented.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And that was actually something that I shared right after losing both Mimi and my mom. Was my grandmother was the family historian. Okay. She had all the photos and all the albums and all the things. And it was my job to go through them. And then when I lost my mom, it was, again, my job to go through them. And I actually shared about that stuff on social media, about all these photos that I was finding and when they were from, and me as a baby and me with these different people. And you're right. Like, we've always known how deeply important photos are. So many people think it's frivolous, but at the end of a life, that is what is left. And I am constantly telling my clients, like, the photos from your family session or your newborn session or your motherhood session or whatever, they're not about the kids. They're about giving this gift to your kids when you're not there anymore, so that they can see how you looked at them when they were 3 years old, how they fit in your lap, how all these things. It's about you being there too. And I have a line in my FAQs now about sessions. I will not photograph just the kids, quote unquote. If you ask me that, I straight up say, no, I don't do that. I can refer you to somebody else, and here's why. And I give this whole explanation about how it is so important for you to be seen with your kids.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed too, like, just taking pictures of mom and dad together without the kids too, like those things. There's just so many opportunities that we miss, and a lot of it's out of vanity for the person in front of the camera. But really, it's so important to think about everyone that's involved and remember, like, how you're gifting your children these photos, not of them, but of who you are with them too.
Yeah, exactly. And, I can tell you, as having that job, having that role of going through all of the photos, I never once looked at those photos and said, my mom looks like crap. My grandmother looks like crap. They look tired. They could have used a haircut. They needed to lose weight. Those thoughts literally did not even cross my mind. Like, it's not, that's not a thing, right? It's not a thing at all. We make it out to be a thing, but it's not. It's not.
So you've got a website for your small business, but you're not really sure if it's working. I've got a brand new free resource that gives you a grade for your website, like old school report card. It's a super easy to use checklist. You'll go through, answer questions, and at the end, you'll get a grade for each page of your site, plus your site overall. And you'll also get next steps to what you need to do to make your website convert and connect with your dream clients, so you have a site that sells your services for you and you can get back to life just how you pictured it. Head to dearkatebrandstrategy.com/report card to get that free resource now. Yeah, we had a big day of going through photos, and like, I'm so grateful for my mother-in-law, who is the family historian on my husband's side of the family, because my side of the family is not very good at that. But she had pictures of him at birthday parties and stuff like that. But just sitting there and sifting through those photos and remembering things, it's just it's important. And like, recently I went through a photo album with my kids it was of my mom before they were even born. I had made a photo album for my mom for her 50th birthday. And so that was fun to like look at, here are her parents and here's Mimi as a baby and, all of those things.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so my mom is a Mimi too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, since your loss is more recent than mine and different.
Yeah.
Is always different.
It's always different.
What has that looked like for you as a business owner and as running a business and being a mom? Like, what has shifted for you since then? Yeah,
it's been really interesting. I it was really hard. So I actually had two newborn sessions the week after he passed away, which like, I think he passed away Wednesday and I had a session Friday. And it was honestly really good for me to have that session, because it was just the newborn and parents, and I got to just like enjoy that baby and enjoy the new life. And it felt kind of full circle, and my dad loved babies. And they were talking about, the lullaby that they play at the hospital. And that had gone off like when I got to the emergency room after he had passed, that you could hear that. And it was like, oh, like that circle of loss and new life. But changes to my business. So like I said, I was in slow season. And I had just started the podcast. It was really hard for me to keep going, honestly. I had already been on antidepressants and sleeping meds, thankfully, and had a therapist, thankfully, all from pandemic stuff. So that was good. But business wise, I just kind of took it slow. And luckily, like my income is not the main income for our house. So I was able to take some time off and kind of slowly work when it made sense. But and then it's really like caused me to kind of reevaluate what I want to do and make sure that I'm not doing things that I don't want to do. And those, like, I always have preached that, right? Like, since when my third was born, I started senior photography when Henry was born, and was doing in-person sales. And I made great money at it, but I didn't enjoy it because of the time away from family. And so like I made that pivot not to do that anymore, and found ways to work during, school hours, and having that loss really just like re-amplified that. And it also re-amplified my need for more time for myself in the week too, where I can go see my mom. And spend time with family outside of work hours when it happened. Like, well, of course it was 2021. So we had just kind of started seeing each other again, we didn't see each other for a lot of the pandemic because we were worried about getting each other sick, which is like wild. Right. And then, it shifted my priorities about like finding time for the other important things for me. Like not just work. I love work. I love doing my job, but it's important for me to go have lunch with my mom once a week, or make sure I see my mother-in-law too. And my husband's grandma is still around. So really prioritizing that family time outside of just my little unit too, because we are homebodies. We can stay home on a weekend gladly, and like that's totally fine with all of us. But it's been really good for us to kind of remember that those other relationships are really important, and valuing that time with people outside of our house and friends and all of it. Honestly, like it made me feel like life is too short to be working all the time, or, to not take advantage of the opportunities that exist.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so everything that I did that shifted and everything you've done that shifted, it's all about getting more time back. Right. And it's hard because when you are an entrepreneur, like we feel like every waking second we have should get poured into this thing we've created, or maybe we're pouring all of our time into it just because we love it and we're excited about it and we're passionate about it. But there's part of it that's like, what's the rush? Like, why can't I still aim towards this goal and this dream and this whatever measure of success? But why does it have to be at that pace? Why can't I just say it's going to take me 2 years instead of 1 year and allow myself more time to breathe, right? Like for me, a lot of the time I have built in is just to give myself grace, right? Like you said, if I'm having a day where it hits me and I'm really sad, or my kids come home from school sick, or whatever, life happens.
Yeah.
Like just giving myself the grace to not be under pressure all the time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And finding ways to, I mean, it's been a lot about like, okay, I just need to hire somebody out for this task or use a program for this task to like make things a little faster. But also I feel like just seeing that connection piece, with wanting to connect with my people also makes me want to connect more with my clients and like, the people that I'm serving, and how can I make a difference for somebody versus how can I make money from somebody?
Yeah.
Which, like that's huge. I feel like thinking about what purpose you're serving in their life. Because you're going to make an impression on people no matter if it's good or bad.
Yeah, totally. And I think time plays into that too. Like having the time and the bandwidth to really develop a relationship beyond just that client, that exchange of money and services, right? But really developing a relationship and, like you said, serving them. Like, how can I serve them? How can I really make an impact that matters? How can I show them that I see them and value them? And a lot of that comes with bandwidth, right? Because when you're in a factory cranking out sessions constantly, you don't have the mental bandwidth for that. And it's not enjoyable. But when you cut your sessions in half or down by 75% and you can really pour into people, you're playing a bigger role, but also like that connection piece, like you said, it's fulfilling to you too. Like we need the connection so bad, you know?
Yeah. That's my word this year is connection.
Oh, I love that.
Because I felt like I was missing it so much. And after I went to the Show It Spark conference in November, it was like, oh, I really do need people, like even more now than ever.
Right.
And so that kind of has been my kind of guiding force this year is how can I talk to people and enjoy people? And, I think a lot of that is from that loss too, and the grief of the pandemic, like that, grief of like the life you had before coronavirus. And you're in Texas, so I think things hit you a little bit differently there than here in Colorado.
Yeah, they did.
So it's been a interesting thing because like honestly, my kids came home from school that March and then they didn't go back to school for a full year. We homeschooled for a year. So really put my business on hold for that and shifted and pivoted for that. And like, it really has been interesting that grief of who I used to be.
Totally. And that's a kind of grief that I don't feel like gets talked about very much. Anytime you had one vision of your life and then it changes, that's grief, right? And so whether it's the pandemic or whether it's you thought you weren't going to be a mom and then you got pregnant, or you thought you were only going to have 2 kids and then you had a surprise 3rd kid, or there's all kinds of grief that aren't necessarily like these horrible things, but people don't realize that anytime you had one vision and you're going full steam ahead and something dramatically changes that and causes some sort of pivot, you are grieving the change. It might not be bad, but you're grieving the life you thought you were going to have. And now trying to like reestablish, okay, just kidding. Now we're doing this other thing over here, And I think people don't allow themselves to feel that grief. Like, oftentimes they're like, oh, well, we're just doing this other thing. And then they try and blow past it. And then all those emotions, I mean, then you're getting into a whole therapy situation, but like allowing yourself the time and space to be a human and be like, oh, well, I liked where I was going and now I'm bummed and that's okay.
Yeah. Giving yourself the space for those feelings to exist and being like not feeling guilty about being sad about something. Like I feel like we shove our feelings down so much, and it's not good for us.
No.
And
no,
again,
not at all.
need therapy for that. But yeah, just having that kind of space in your business though to allow for those periods of grief, even if you're not haven't experienced the loss of a loved one. Like you said, having a third baby when you didn't expect to.
Right.
I had my third baby about a year earlier than planned, and it was a gut punch to like refigure all of my goals. And I mean, that's where that in-person sales thing and the senior photography came in. I had planned to go to a conference for that. I went 14 weeks pregnant, and like made those shifts still. And then it happened. Then baby was here, and it was like, well, this is not working. So having to like adjust to that was huge too.
Yeah. So obviously we both made changes to like our time and our capacity, which also there's like a boundary there, right? Like we're setting firm boundaries about what we can take on and what we can't, and saying no more. I'm curious, even though you said earlier that like your household does not rely on your income, did those boundary shifts and those time parameters, did you raise your prices or change your pricing structure to support that?
I did. Yeah, I did. So when I switched off of doing in-person sales, I raised my family pricing significantly and switched to soft proofing for those clients. And it made a huge difference for how I felt about my work. How I didn't feel burnt out anymore because I wasn't, I wasn't making pennies for leaving my 3 kids. Like my kids are really close in age. They're 20 months and then 28 months apart. So I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an infant. Like it was bananas at that time. And making those shifts so that I could spend time with them. I mean, also, no one wants to babysit 3 kids that are that close in age. It was really hard to find childcare.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think there's a big piece, like a big money piece there that, I mean, we start our business because we're like, I love taking photos. I love capturing memories. And it's all exciting at first. But I think part of allowing, at least I know for me, allowing myself to have a lighter calendar and not take on as much, I do need that financial payout.
Yeah.
To feel like it's okay, to feel justified, right?
Yeah.
Like I am helping support my family, and my income does matter. And if I'm not making a certain amount, then I feel like I have to take on more. And so there's a requirement to like raise your prices so that you can breathe a little easier and feel supported and feel okay with only taking half as many sessions or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is that comes with time and experience. Like, I feel like every podcast, every speaker, every class is like, raise your prices. And newer photographers are like, la, 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 plugging their ears, just kind of ignoring it. But I don't care how you look at it, from what perspective, you need to raise your prices.
Yeah. Well, and for me, the biggest shift was like realizing that what people were paying me for was not just my skill and the pictures that I was taking, but it was for my time away from my family.
Yeah.
And like, that made it easier for me to charge more because my family is worth more. It's a mindset thing. Like, obviously I'm worth that much too, but at the time that wasn't how I felt about it. But feeling like my time away from my family was worth that much versus the photos that I'm delivering, which, I mean, you're also giving an experience and blah, blah, blah. But, there's a huge value in seeing that you're valuable and that you have worth to not just the clients, but to the people that you're missing out on too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to yourself, your family, your personal time. And when you look at it like that, and you're like, is this extra job that I'm already at capacity, but is taking on this extra job worth missing out on XYZ with my family? And 99% of the time, the answer is going to be no. No. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing with having a business that's sustainable through the ups and downs of life is charging enough that you can have the capacity, the time capacity to say no to things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So that you can like deal with the grief when it comes up and make those shifts and changes too. Yeah. Okay. We should probably wrap it up, but I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I could keep going.
I know.
But
I know.
Let's it's so hard to put a cap on things, right? But I do want to respect your time and our audience's time. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up for now. But Sabrina, where can people find you? Where should we find you online?
Yeah. So the easiest place is probably Instagram at Sabrina Gebhardt Photography. I'm there most days. My personal favorite feature of Instagram is the DM like voice memoing. So if you ask me a question or if you ask me a question or say hello, I am probably popping in and you're going to hear my voice. So don't let that frighten you. Let that be welcoming, but I love it when people come say hello.
Very cool. And Sabrina, you also have the Roundtable membership. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I have a little monthly membership. There's about 55 women and growing currently. It is just women. Sorry, guys.
Including me.
Yes, including Kate. There's a lot of fun people in there, but it is very heavily focused on community, which is the connection piece. The having women friends that understand what you're doing is so huge. But my whole premise behind this group is enough information every month to keep you accountable and growing without overwhelming you. So there's 3 pieces of content every month, and that looks different every month, which is really fun because it's always keeping you on your toes. But it's almost always one guest speaker, and then there will be some sort of teaching from me or a Q&A or hot seats. And then there's generally some sort of download, like a behind the scenes video or a PDF
I'm excited
guide
to watch.
Yeah. So it's enough to you can totally digest 3 things a month, right? And then other than that, it's just the community. Like it is such a safe space to ask questions or share struggles or wins. And it's just a little group that I'm so proud of. And I'd love to have anybody that wants to join it. And it's $22 a month. So
super affordable, which is awesome.
Yes.
I'm excited to dive into the video you sent out today.
Yes.
Looks so good. And there's some other trainings that I have to dive in still too, but it's been really nice to be part of another little community and having, I think it's so important to have a sounding board, and have people to talk to that are experiencing the same things as you are.
100%.
Which, as solopreneurs, like we don't have that as solopreneurs. We work by ourselves. This is my office. Here I am alone all day. So, it's really important to have that connection piece. So I love that. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thanks for having me, friend.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of How You Pictured It. I enjoyed my conversation with Sabrina, and I think it's such an important one, talking about grief and this thing we all experience universally, but also so differently from each other, and how it can affect running our businesses, and how it can make those shifts in our perspective and what we find to be important going forward. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. I would love for you to leave a review for How You Pictured It on whatever podcast player you're listening to. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.